In today's video, it's Fed talk, then a look at earnings, and of course, a little bit about the antitrust panel for the Fangs. Hello and welcome to another ACY Securities Market Update. My name is Alistair Schultz and I'm going to be your host through today's trading journey. The first thing that we're looking at today is how Victoria is shaping around the virus. At the moment, they've reported 723 new cases just today. Now, so far, we're looking at a growth factor that's sitting at 1.02. Now, the way that it works with coronavirus is we want to see that number be below 1, which is giving early indicators that it is probably going to continue to rise and get big numbers every single day for quite some time to come. In the same period of time, New South Wales reported only 18 new cases, and Queensland is set to close its borders to New South Wales and has already done so for Victoria by this weekend on Saturday. Now, regardless of this situation, we're sitting right in earnings season and we've also had some inflationary reports coming out from the RBA. Now, when it comes to the investor side of circles, really they are looking at the coronavirus situation and they're a little bit worried about it. So we're going to have to monitor that quite closely to see where the Australian economy might go down the track. Moving on, it is last night's Fed talk. Not a TED talk, a Fed talk. Now, I'm sure that Jerome Powell is really thinking what I've written in the speech but before him here, saying please improve GDP. But the reality of what they've done is they've left the rate near zero with no changes there, but they have signaled towards there being more stimulus down the track. The USD has been sliding its way all down the week, right up until the announcement where we saw it consolidate for a brief period of time. Now, of course, investors were not all that confident in what's been happening with the US situation, particularly with the impact of coronavirus, and of course, the idea from live data suggesting that perhaps we're looking at a situation where the economy is starting to stall its recovery. So today, we're going to be seeing investors look towards the GDP figures. We're going to be seeing some pretty impressive numbers. It's already likely to expected or forecast for a 34% drop or somewhere in the vicinity of that either side. Now, regardless of whether it is better than the expected or not, it is still going to be the largest fall in GDP that we've seen in basically our lifetimes. The last time something that bad was going on was back in the 1940s and the 1930s. But even then, the economy was a much smaller size back then. So it will still have a very dramatic impact on how they can recover down the track. Looking at Samsung now, an earnings season, they actually had their shares rise by 1.9%, with the total weekly gains at 10% and pushing ever closer to possibly being beyond that with the next coming days. Net income has risen by $4.6 billion, which was above analyst expectations and what was forecasted earlier on in the year. Samsung says that demand for chips is expected to rise in the second half of this year, particularly around gaming and mobile devices. Now, of course, there's also been some speculation on some collaboration occurring between Samsung and Intel has delayed production because they're not being able to meet that quota. So one of the only other manufacturers that's capable of doing some of those chips happens to be Samsung, which means we might see even more positive news for them in the not too distant future. Looking at the Fangs now. Now, Fangs obviously, whilst it's in earnings season, they've all reported pretty good and healthy profits. The part of this, though, is that there is an antitrust panel. Now, antitrust laws were passed not too long ago in the US, and it really focuses on the idea of really big conglomerates being able to beat the little man down and can beat them on price and eventually acquire them as an anti-competitive acquisition. So the panel is really focusing on that anti-competitive acquisition. We've already heard from Mark Zuckerberg and we've also heard from Jeff Bezos, who have been discussing some of the metrics about their operations. Now, if anyone remembers, back in 2012, Facebook acquired Instagram with similar metrics, trying to beat them down in price before finally acquiring them for a much lower rate than what they're really deemed in value now. And of course, Amazon has been doing it with diapers.com in the last couple of weeks, trying to beat their competitors into submission. So right now, with all the Fangs providing some level of testimony, it's going to be interesting to see how they respond and what the competitor laws really look like for the US moving forward. Because naturally, if they do invoke some new laws, or perhaps they try and put a different level of trust systems in place, then it might mean that the way that these big Fang companies and the mega companies have been operating might be reduced a little bit. Now, looking at the news ahead, we have Euro-German prelim GDP figures coming out. We also have the big one being the US GDP. There are some other minor events throughout today, but really it's going to be focusing on the US situation tonight, particularly because of the big forecast for a drop of 34%. So keep an eye on what's happening with that. I'm expecting that this is really going to echo some of the sounds that were made by the Fed just last night about their expectations on monetary policy and, of course, the economy moving forward. We've also got unemployment claims a little bit after that and natural gas storage. But again, US GDP is going to be the big one. So keep an eye on that tonight, especially if you're trading any USD pairs. And of course, as always, feel like getting in contact with me for anything that I've covered today. Shoot me an email at talktoal@acy.com. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video so you can get more great content from me and ACY Securities in the future. Have a great trading day ahead.